powered by the Predictive Playbook and presented to you by SportsMemo TV. And we're going to recap some of the day's activities. It's not your traditional quick hitting, what's the best bet type of show, but it gets, Rob and I and Tony, well, Anthony, we all dig into this thing pretty deep sometimes. And it's more of a show for learning how we break down games, how we assess news, and everything that goes into the process of handicapping. And now we have the COVID situation, which is, I think, getting easier, Rob. And by the way, welcome to the show. I think the COVID situation with the NBA has been a major challenge when it first hit. But now the difference is that we have guys returning. So much like the flu would nail a team in college basketball, for example, right. It's much the same thing, but on a much larger scale. But how are you finding things with the handicapping of this stuff?
Well, we know one thing, John, you got to stay on top of it. I mean, it's ever changing every hour. The rules are different for vaccinated or unvaccinated players. Vaccinated players get back quicker if they can test negative. Unvaccinated players have a mandated amount of time. But even that amount of time has been shortened up by the NFL and the NBA. Now you don't have to spend 10 days on the COVID list anymore. I think it's only 5 or 6. The NBA shortened theirs again, which I think goes to show you that, they've kind of come to the realization that the hysteria that goes across the country that comes with this virus shouldn't necessarily be treated as hysteria. I think you mentioned it best. For years and years and years, especially in the wintertime, the flu would run rampant through NBA locker rooms. We never saw postponements, cancellations. Michael Jordan's most famous for playing a flu game, right?
Absolutely.
Where he scored like crazy. So hopefully, it's dying down a little bit. But I do notice they would not shorten up the time frame of when players are eligible to come back. If they thought that it was harmful to anybody involved. So I think that's a good sign. Some of these rosters, I mean, you print out a box score at night, John, and it takes 2 pages of paper to print out a single game box score because there's not only are there 15 guys involved in the game, 7 of which you've never heard of, but then there's the list of DNPs that didn't play in the game. They're another, 6, 7, 10 deep. So it's been a little crazy. But if you're on top of it, I think you can find advantages, right? Last night, just for a quick example, the Milwaukee Bucks were playing an absolutely decimated Orlando Magic team. I mean, I don't know if anybody at this current time is hit harder than they are. Maybe there's some hit as hard, but they have nobody on the floor. And Milwaukee is, this is the way it goes, right? One team returns to health. Milwaukee went through theirs, and now they're healthy. Orlando is going through theirs. And if you catch these cycles just right, you wind up with games last night where you're laying 8.5 in the first half and you're winning by 27 at halftime because the Bucks starting 5 against the Magic's G League 5 just aren't the same teams. So I think we've taken pretty good advantage of that. Same goes with the NFL. But it's difficult on early releases. I don't know about yourself, but all that stuff about releasing plays to clients for shelf life and, sales opportunities and whatnot, that's going by the wayside here. I find myself, 2.5 hours before game time, 2 hours before game time sometimes, until we know who's in there, you just can't take the chances of
right.
I woke up this morning and I loved an NBA game. I played San Antonio, Miami. 6 hours later, it's canceled. So you just never know. The UCLA game last night, and I actually retweeted an article. I don't do it very often, but there was an article where NC State was extremely upset with the way UCLA handled it. NC State flies all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Prep. They have no word or warning that, maybe UCLA's got something going on. Maybe you guys won't play. And then boom, 6 hours before kickoff, they're hit with that news. And rightfully so, their head coach was a little ticked off because his version is, if we had known this 3 days ago that you guys were having some trouble, we would have made secondary plans. We really wanted to play in a game There were other opportunities. We're
Yep.
going for 10 wins this season, and you didn't even give us the shot to do that. So I think that was pretty wrong of UCLA to not even let NC State know that there might be a chance. We'll see as we go on. Some of these games, it seems like if I play them, they go down to COVID. I had the UCLA game last night. I thought that was a real good play and winds up not getting played. But they're taking the best precautions. I know guys like Jim Harbaugh wouldn't let his team go home for Christmas. Jim Harbaugh kept the Michigan football team all together as one to be more preventative. And so I think as far as our college football semifinals go, we'll be okay. I'm looking up here now real quick because we got another bowl game about to kick, Clemson and Iowa State.
That should be a pretty good game. You know, Clemson's skinny favorite, and you would think that even though it's not a semifinal game that they're used to playing, that they would want to try to win this one convincingly just for the recruiting part of it. So, and Iowa State is no walkover. So we're getting that point of the year, of the bowl season year, where the games are starting to get more of the powerhouse teams, and steadily over the next 48 hours, we'll be watching the semifinal games. But, you mentioned Harbaugh with the Christmas. I'm almost surprised that he stated that. And I did see that he didn't let the kids go home. If I was a coach in any year, I wouldn't want anybody leaving. Like, okay, it's Christmas. You're late teens. That Santa Claus doesn't exist, and your family's probably going to be at the game. If not, you're going to see your family right after the game. And especially now, like, I can't imagine Saban letting anybody even get out of even remotely close to being off campus. But could be wrong. Like, if I was one of those four teams, let me rephrase that, Rob, because it'll sound bad if I say it that way, because it makes the other teams it doesn't matter. But if I had a team that was in a bowl game, I'd be thinking of the seniors, number one, and that, in this environment, nobody's going to go home for Christmas, or give them the choice. The underclassmen can go home, but then you're not coming back for the bowl game, just to avoid getting infected. And we know that once you get one person infected, all you have to do in those, they have large shower rooms. We don't have to, large locker rooms. It'll spread like wildfire. So I don't know what that means for handicapping, Rob, but I just got off the rails there a little bit. But what about John Madden? I saw the news last night, and I was like, whoa. And we knew he was, in his mid-80s, but then to see him, pass on, and of course he's, we'd like to think he's joining Pat Summerall up there and calling the Super Bowl games up there in heaven. But I mean, what a duo, and what a guy. I'm giving myself goosebumps thinking about, because you and I grew up with John Madden when he was a coach. I was reminded that he started his career as a tackle at Cal Poly Slow. Not exactly your Alabamas of the United States, and he just seemed to be such a likable guy even then, that he always was at the right place at the right time, and are surrounded around the right people that saw his potential. And it wasn't just potential in football, or coaching. It was, I think, his number one asset was being the commentator, the color man. He won a Super Bowl, but is that his best accomplishment? Probably not. But what a guy! I mean, what a guy! What are some of your top memories of him? Like, if I mention John Madden to you, what's the first couple of things that come to mind?
Well, I would say the first thing that comes to my mind, and this is just unique to myself, is he was an absolute, maybe the largest human being I had ever seen at the time. I was with my dad at the Dunes Hotel in Las Vegas, and we were just walking through the casino. This is back mid to late 80s. And, the slot machine sections of those casinos, this monster of a guy over top of you could see him over top of the slot machines. And I look at him, and of course he's very recognizable. I mean, you see John Madden. And I remember pointing to my dad. I said, holy, I won't use the word I use, but that's John Madden. And he's over there signing an autograph for somebody. But I mean, he was huge. When you see him in the booth, for people that are not my age, people that are younger, you probably only know him through video games, or maybe you got to see him in the booth, but sitting down doesn't do him any justice. And even, all the highlights that we've seen the past, I don't know, 18 hours or so of him on the sidelines, in person, he looks even bigger than he did on the sidelines. And maybe that's because on the sidelines, you're next to so many other guys your size. But man, that was a big guy. And I think the other thing real quick, and it's not necessarily a memory, but John Madden is really remembered, at least by myself. And remember, we're close in age. I'm 60 years old. So 1961 till now, I saw John Madden as a coach. I saw him as a broadcaster. And to me, he's remembered as two different people. I think at the time when he was a head coach, he was not exactly this well-liked, lovable guy that the whole country would mourn for. But that opinion, when he hit the booth, changed dramatically. Anybody who hated him hate's a strong word. Anybody who disliked John Madden and his style as the Oakland Raiders head coach. And believe me, back in the day, if you were an Oakland Raiders fan, you were an Oakland Raiders fan. If you didn't like the Oakland Raiders, there was no middle ground with the Raiders. They're kind of like the way the Yankees are. Back then, the silver and black, either you loved them or you despised them. And Madden as their head coach was kind of that way. But boy, once he teamed up with Pat Summerall, I mean, you see it today. You can't find, and time heals everything, right? But you can't find a bad word said about John Madden, because the majority of his career was spent in that booth with Pat Summerall and others. And you kind of forget I don't know, John, his coaching career, maybe 12 years as a head coach, maybe 12, 14 years. It's not a lot. But that seems to be forgotten because a lot of people didn't see that. But he was quite the demonstrative head coach on the sidelines as the head coach of the Oakland Raiders. Did win the Super Bowl against the Vikings. Oakland came close a lot. He is the guy. Again, not telling anybody who has lived this long to any secrets, but he is the guy who was the head coach of the Steelers when Franco Harris and the Immaculate Reception happened. So he saw a lot in football. I mean, as I was looking last night, and sometimes you need to be shook a little memory-wise, John, right? Sometimes you need to you saw it, but you don't, 35, 40 years go by, you forget the Dave Casper play where the Raiders kicked the ball into the end zone and recover the fumble, and they had to change the rule. And the Kenny Stabler pass to beat the Dolphins 28-26 or whatever that final score was in a playoff game. He was involved in a lot of very, very close or controversial football games. So good long career, 85 years. He had a good long life. And I think he's sorely missed by everybody that is associated with football today.
I think so too. It's just like I never like the feeling I had last night was like, yes, he's passed on, but then it was just a flood of all these like great positive memories. Like you said, he was involved in so many different things, and his transitions from each one of the three things he did in his career, including the evolution of the Xbox with Madden. I mean, it's just totally remarkable. Now, granted, he probably wasn't building the Xbox or creating the software, but his name was stamped on it, and he was actively involved in. Obviously, you heard his voice whenever you played the game. And even before we had that technology, there was Madden, the game, which I remember. But I think, like you said, I think that one play was called Casper was called the Ghost or something, right? That was his nickname because he was.
Yeah, the play that they changed the rule for was the Holy Roller, was the
So
name of the
yeah,
play that they changed the rule for. And then you just reminded me, because Ghost to the Post was a touchdown pass against the Indianapolis Colts in the mid-'70s in overtime to win a playoff game. So that's another one that I didn't even
yep.
mention. A lot of games John Madden was involved with. Either very, very memorable. That Colts team was really good. Again, I'm drifting here, but as a kid, Burt Jones might have been my favorite quarterback from
Yeah.
LSU, quarterback of the Baltimore Colts at the time, the Baltimore Colts, not the Indianapolis Colts. And Lydell Mitchell was a running back on that team from Penn State. They had a receiver named Roger Carr. That was a good Colts team that I think that was 31-31 at the end of regulation. And then Stabler hits Dave Casper on a post pattern, and thus the nickname of that game, Goes to the Post.
And I did see Peyton Manning recap. I guess it was one of the best comebacks in NFL history that John Madden called with, I think it was Pat Summerall. And it was 35-14 with under 6 minutes to go in the game. Final score 38-35. Colts won. And John Madden's comment after the final gun went off was, folks, the Indianapolis Colts have arrived. And it obviously meant the world to Peyton Manning, because he mentioned it, I think, at the Hall of Fame speech he delivered, and teared up. That being recognized by him in that way was just so monumental to him in his life that you can't even put it in perspective. So he called a lot of games, and of course he was a gourmet chef, as everybody knows. What was the where he took the duck, the chicken, and the turkey on Thanksgiving Day and put them together? It was like what, duck?
Yeah, turducken or something like that.
Turducken, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have eaten that. I would have taken the drumstick. But didn't I was asking somebody today about this. Didn't the MVP award for the Turkey Day game that he and Pat Summerall called start with 2 drumsticks, and it ended with either 6 or 8? So they would show a turkey that would have, all with all the fixings, but it would have 6 legs or 8 legs, and then they pull one off and give it to the player. That was just outrageously good. I almost wish that them could have carried on more years, but they were, obviously they were getting up there, and I think a lot of the younger crowd, the Generation Z, would find this amazing that a guy like John Madden, as big and strong as he is, as popular as he is, never flew in a plane. Took the bus. He had his own bus once he, got the wealth that he had. Never flew. From what everybody says, he never flew in his entire life and always was on that bus. You would never think a man like that would be frightened to fly. You just wouldn't.
No, and even that became a very recognizable bus across highways. They called it the Madden Cruiser. And, much like a band, a successful band has a huge tour bus that's customized for him. That's the way he traveled. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of things about John Madden. I think that the player of the game, either Thanksgiving Day or maybe player of the game when he was on Monday Night Football, would sign the side of that bus. Or they would put his head, a picture of his head on the side of that bus week by week. So, yeah, I mean, he started a lot of things. Certainly, and again, this is a guy, I don't think he sought out for the type of fame that he achieved. He's a football guy, football player, football coach, and he achieved fame in, the world of video games, the world of analyst and commentary, for riding a bus, for, standing on the field and handing out these. I don't know where those turkey legs came from that he would give out on Thanksgiving Day, but those were the most enormous. and players wanted to win the MVP so they could get, they wanted that. So it's different. I can't think of anybody nowadays, John, calling games that has that type of appeal with the players. Not only the fans, but with the players. The players, like you mentioned about Peyton Manning, there was, some type of honor being mentioned as player of a game in a game that John Madden called, and getting the turkey leg on Thanksgiving Day from him. So yeah, it's just a different breed, different time, of course. But yeah, he and Pat Summerall became the 4:00. I mean, I lived on the East Coast at the time, so they were the 4:00 game of the week each and every week. And of course, he did Monday Night Football as well. It's a lot of years.
He was the. I don't even know what the analogy is to another, couple, quote unquote. It'd be like you would be the Pat Summerall and Tony Finn would have been Madden.
Yeah, and I think previous to them, John, I really think that Frank Gifford, Don Meredith, and Howard Cosell they were a threesome, but they were that crew, and then it evolved from them to Madden and Summerall. And then I guess modern day, it's Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I guess modern day, they've been around the longest as a team broadcasting the so-called A game every week. So I guess that's where the evolution has come to here in 2021. And of course, Buck and Aikman have been calling games together for quite some time. But I guess that would be the comparison. But they don't have those two don't have nearly the appeal that Summerall and Madden had.
And Madden would go off on the teleprompter and start drawing all over it. And this guy's going this way, and this guy's going this way. And you know what happens when you rush a quarterback? You either get him or you don't. And then that famous line he said about Troy Aikman, that he thought Troy Aikman was running faster with his shoe off because it made him lighter or something. I'll never forget that. That was hysterical. But you can't duplicate that because you'd be copying it. There's no way to naturally have two guys, ham and egg it the way they did. Summerall was that calming force in the booth. That voice was just so powerful. Welcome to Dallas Stadium. And you knew you were going to see a great game.
Yeah, I think in that regard, Brent Musburger certainly is in that category. Brent Musburger started so long ago on the NFL Today in the mid-'70s with Irv Cross and Phyllis George on the pregame show for CBS. But now that you mentioned that, I was just trying to think. I really feel like John Madden was the first guy on a telestrator. I'm trying to think of who was on a telestrator drawing plays before him, and I don't think it was anybody that I can remember.
I think you're right.
So we're giving him credit for a lot of things that he was involved with first. That's another one. I would say that I don't remember guys now using a telestrator, and now it's touch screens. These guys walk the screen, they touch a button, and they show you the play. But he would just have that thing such a for those old enough to remember what an Etch-a-Sketch was, and you could just make lines all over the place. That's kind of like what John Madden was. The lines would just, and this guy goes here, and that guy goes there, and this, and at the end, it would just look like a scrambled mess. But you understood. He had the ability to help you understand, even though it looked like all the lines going through one another. But he probably was the first guy on a telestrator on TV.
Yeah. He did it in the movie The Replacements with Keanu Reeves. Him and Summerall did the game in that movie, and he does this guy goes this way, he fumbles the ball, this guy picks it up. It was just a riot. It was just so much fun to hear him just go off like that. It was, and personally, I think everybody, not just myself, but everybody has missed that combination of announcer because. As you said, Aikman and Joe Buck are great. Tony Romo, I think, has done an excellent job too. But Madden brought that commentating that a guy who never saw a football show in his life would all of a sudden find himself enamored watching this guy on TV. I think Arnold Palmer's and the Jack Nicklaus of the world brought so many people and fans and new golfers into the PGA Tour. Madden brought a lot of fans into the NFL, and probably more fans than we could even comprehend. But anyway, Why don't we give a free pick out each? I'll let you go first, and I'll do mine, and we'll call it a show. Get some dinner.
Well, let's stick with tonight then. There's still one bowl game left here. Oregon's going to play Oklahoma. Actually, just watching Clemson pick up a first down here. Oregon's going to play Oklahoma tonight. Oregon at one point during their 15-game practice sessions was down to just 30 scholarship players at practice. They've had injuries and opt-outs, and not that every team hasn't had it, but Oregon's had it, since about 2-3 weeks to the end of the season, when their wide receivers started dropping like flies, defensive players started dropping due to injury. They're going to take on Oklahoma tonight, which has had their own share of turmoil. Both sides have, overhauls in the coaching. Bob Stoops going to be back on the sidelines for one game for Oklahoma tonight, while Brian McClendon, an offensive coordinator for, I think, like 3 schools in the last 4 years, going to run the show for Oregon as Mario Cristobal hits the deck. But I think Oklahoma is the right side here, John. For Oregon, the defensive losses are huge, especially in the secondary. And team with that, Kayvon Thibodeau, who may be your number one pick in the NFL draft come April, edge rusher, defensive end. So you combine lack of cover guys with lack of pass rush, and that's never a good combination. Oklahoma's a pretty balanced offensive team. Caleb Williams, freshman quarterback, Kennedy Brooks, star running back, and a host of receivers. They should be able to score enough points here to cover this 7 number. On the other side of that, Oklahoma has really been hit hard across their front 7. So stopping the running game might be difficult for them. But I just don't know. I've said it all season long, John. I don't feel like watching the Oregon Ducks this year looked as explosive offensively as it's looked for the last 10 years, back to when Chip Kelly took over and all the way through till now. There's something about Oregon where you felt like they could strike from any point of the field at any time for a touchdown. You don't get that feeling this year with Anthony Brown at quarterback. They're more methodical. I don't know that methodical works here when it comes to covering 7 points. So I'm going to take Oklahoma. The game opened 4. Obviously, if you got in quick, you got a way better number. But I could see Oklahoma over the course of 60 minutes pulling away here, winning by 14, 17 points, maybe more than that if it really starts to snowball on Oregon. Matching point for point here, I don't think they can do it.
I'm with you. I'm actually on Oklahoma myself tonight, and I'm not afraid of 7.5. I'm not afraid of 9.5, to tell you the truth. My models have it at 11. High probability that Oklahoma wins by double digits. And I said high probability. I did not say lock. I did not say certainty, but it is about an 82% chance that Oklahoma, especially if they score 31 or more points, will win this by double digits and cover the spread pretty easily. So I am with you on that one. I have notes on the Eagles and the football team. I say football team, and I every time I say Washington anymore in the NFL, the way our world is, I like freeze and like, wait a minute, what's the mascot? Well, they don't have one. What are they? And you don't want to say the former mascot because then you're frowned upon, and it's a mistake. But the Iron Condors is what I like to call them because I'm never going to make a mistake, and people go, wait, it's an Iron Condor. Well, Google it. Now, I promise you, it is not an animal, but it could easily be converted into a mascot. They need a mascot. I'm tired of the football team's a rec team. The football team. It sounds like a Australian rugby team that hasn't decided who the president of the organization is yet. But anyway, the Eagles are right there on the doorstep again. And I guess I will go with this direction. I'll tell you real quickly, I like the Bulls quite a bit. Ronald Kabang over at SportsMemo has joined me on the NBA show. He and I, believe it or not, Rob, have combined for a 24-8 record on the show. Now, you can't lie about these things, right? We actually went 1-2 on Monday, so we're completely ashamed of ourselves. But still, 24-8 after a 1-2 night, I think we'll take it. So we're just trying to, you know how it is when you start getting into the 70s, you're just trying to tread water and keep doing those 2-and-1s as long as possible. But it is fun when those runs hit. Even Dave Koken actually reached out in a tweet and said to us, nice run, gentlemen. I mean, when you guys actually see it and say, oh wow, that's pretty cool, and it gets us going. Just like when we see you guys on a run, it's like, oh, there it is again. But for you, Rob, you've been number one at WagerTalk the last 2 years. So I mean, it's almost uneventful at this point. But I do like the Bulls quite a bit tonight. I do not see how in the world the Hawks will be able to beat them. The Hawks just are a completely dysfunctional team right now, not as dysfunctional as the Lakers. And I know we don't want to get Ski Profit and I talking about the Lakers together on the same show, from what I hear, because it probably could get. I mean, it would be definitely talking to the choir. My understanding is that you just continue to fade Lakers until proven wrong, until they get their act together. They won last night to stop a 4-game losing streak, but they gave up like over 120 points to a team with 10 wins. And now they're playing back-to-back nights. I think I would look Memphis way too in that game. But let's circle back to the Eagles. They're on the cusp. It's a year where the game before Detroit, the fan base was calling for Soriano to be fired. It was the lowest reading I've ever got out of my Twitter app that I run through Python in terms of the betting community being so against one team. So that betting community was betting their rear ends off on the Detroit Lions, who I don't think was nearly as bad as a winless team would normally be. But the Eagles just went out there and pounded them. Now, granted, not a good team, but it's that sentiment sway that has me a little bit concerned now, because, wow, we're going to get into the playoffs, and with that running game, we could do this. But I do think it's amazing, and I give credit to Soriano, that during that time where the Philadelphia media was calling for his head, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's overwhelmed. This league is over his head. He doesn't have the ability to manage an NFL team. That now he's being brought up in the topic of Coach of the Year. So good for him. I am concerned that Washington if you want to talk about a desperate team that needs a win, it's them. But I don't know if they have enough fuel in the tank. I just hope that the Eagles' game plan starts out with that running game. For whatever reason, they did not do that against the Giants. They got down 3-0, kicked a field goal at the end of the half, just make it 3-3. And then I had the under in that game, Rob. I actually told the Prez about this one, because talking about bad beats. It was over. Well, when I actually put it out, I won. But the majority of people lost because the line moved. But they scored 38 points in the second half in almost meaningless fashion. And it goes over by half a point based on the closing line. But whatever. But I hope that offense in the second half starts out and takes Washington and their fans right out of the game. There are some things working against the Eagles, though, and I can share those with you. And I'll just put this out for people listening, because this is about sharing ideas. So if you have an idea of one way or the other this game, or any of the games that Rob and I have talked about, you can mention in the comments section. We will get back to you. But this would be underdogs that have been beaten by the spread by 27 or more points spanning their last 3 games, which is the Washington Iron Condors, and are playing in week 15 or 16. So this year would be 15, 16, or 17 or 18. So game number 15 on out. Have gone 58 wins, 110 losses for 34% straight up. 96, 68, and 4 against the spread for 59% winners. That is betting on the Iron Condors. The under is 90 wins, 77 losses, 54% since 2000. Now, I write here, now if our barking dog is chained up at home, it gets totally different. They are 29 and 39 straight up. which as a money line bet, that has made money for somebody that's bet the money line this situation, and a lot of money. 45, 22, and 1 against the number for 67.2%. And that supports Washington. The under is 39, 29, 57%. I would expect a divisional rivalry this late in the season to play under. But I will not give it out as a bet, because I think Soriano has that team focused and they're confident. The body language is good, and I think the Eagles probably take care of business. But just a little bit of caution. It may not be easy. To cover a big number like that on the road this late in the season, I might almost watch the game, Rob, and hope that Washington scores first and then do the in-game. I'd love to do that. But any final thoughts? Tell us what's going on over at WagerTalk. Any big promos you have going on for the people to take advantage of?
Well, at WagerTalk, I think what came out today was, their special offer is buy 3 months, get 3 months free.
Yeah.
You wind up with 6 months, a half a year worth of coverage from handicapper of your choice. So that's new over there. Bowl season winding down now. I'm sure there's still bowl specials available at WagerTalk.com. College basketball season has been sketchy because we've had so many cancellations every single night. Half the board is canceled, so it's a little difficult there. But as far as wins, losses are concerned, NBA's been real good lately. I believe last 3 days over at WagerTalk, I sit on top. The last 7 days, fell to second place because my good friend Ski Profit went 10-0 in the NBA last night and took over that last 7-day number.
That's amazing.
But there's a lot of streaks going on over there. Everybody seems to be in pretty decent form. So yeah, visit WagerTalk.com. All my work is over there. If you're interested in analysis on some of these bowl games, go back and just watch WagerTalk TV on YouTube. Videos are there. This afternoon, John and I were talking about it off air. Part of the Wednesday crew college football show with Drew Martin and Ralph Michaels. We discussed Central Michigan versus Washington State, which is, of course, Central Michigan's a replacement team. And then we wound up doing 2 New Year's Day games, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, and Penn State, Arkansas. So if you're interested in any of those, the analysis can be found there, WagerTalk TV on YouTube.com. Find all your stuff there. Also, the NBA tip-off show. So it's just busy, John. You know how it is. It's that time of year. Once football finally ends, then we'll have basketball until March Madness, and it'll be crazy. And then after that, baseball comes around. If they ever come off strike, we'll slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I want to enjoy New Year's Eve first, Rob. Then we'll talk baseball.
We may not. Who knows? We may not. Somehow they always seem to settle, but that's probably, and it's a good thing we don't have Tony Finn here because we'd be on for another hour. But it is the sport of all the major sports that seems to shoot themselves in the foot the most with their strikes. So it's the off season. Nobody really cares right now, but let's hope that they do find a way to give us a season, because a sport that doesn't need any bad publicity will probably get a lot of bad publicity if they're not playing on opening day.
As they say in Boston, that would be a disaster.
Absolutely.
I can't even comprehend a fan. I mean, it'd be worse than 93, 94.
Yeah, that's just never good. Never good for a sport that's always seeking new eyeballs. We need a bigger fan base. And then they go out, and like I say, they always shoot themselves in the foot to the point where we could really get Tony on a tangent here, to the point where they ignore steroids and, to get the fan base back. So we'll see what happens. Right now,
let's see if we can get him on tomorrow. I understand Tony McGee will join us tomorrow for a Manny's Pub show, and that would be pretty cool to get all 4 of us back at the same time. I really didn't. I always thought that we'd be able to try to fit it in, like Manny's Irish Pub, at 5:30, or what the hell, we'll do it at 7:30. But then our it hits you, and reality hits you, and the workload is big, and we're coming to the end of it. So come February, that's when we start to sleep again, and then we can get all revved up for March Madness and then
Yep.
baseball. I mean, there's always something to look forward to being a sports fan, and that's why we love it. But Rob, thanks a lot for your time today, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow if the schedule works. So for everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great night. And do me a favor, do Rob a favor, do us all a favor, and subscribe to the show. Subscribe to the Wager Talk channel as well and Sports Memo TV. And you'll be glad you did because you know why? If you hit that bell, you'll never miss a show. You'll be notified right away of any live shows, and all the live shows are archived. So it takes 2 seconds, and you'll have some of the best content from literally 30 guys that have been doing this for more than 20 years each minimum. Some guys more than 40. So I encourage you to do that. And for today's show, let's wrap it up, Rob. And on behalf of the Sports Memo TV, Wager Talk, and the Predictive Playbook shows, always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and may all the wins be yours. Thanks for watching.